Hello, and welcome to the Agile Magician's Bookshelf channel, where we've been on a 2-week break whilst I was giving presentations in the Philippines at the Tarot Con in Manila, hosted by Rob Rubin, and I did presentations at the Tokyo Tarot Museum as well, and I've got a bit of an update as to the channel and a few other things. We're only going to do about half an hour because I've still got jet lag, so I've worked through my early morning time, which was about 3 or 4 hours ago, so I pushed through that, so I'll be able to stay awake for about an hour before my body will try and collapse. I don't think I can answer that particular tarot reading question today, but obviously we might be able to take a look at some tarot readings next week when we're back to our usual schedule. So we're just going to have a general tarot and esoteric discussion today. So first of all, can someone confirm in the live chat if they can hear me? That would be useful. I'm assuming so. So hello to our Agile Magician's Bookshelf channel members. Membership is very much appreciated. It does help support the channel. And thank you for Tony for moderating. So hello to Tracy and Apox and Birds. And did I see Bill? Yes, Bill as well. And Marie, hello, and Sherry. So it's nice to be back. It's nice to welcome you all back into this space. I'm looking forward over next year to us building a sort of community space here. Sorry, I'm just going to hide that user. Okay. There we go. So yeah, so it's okay, Tony. I've taken executive action. I'm sorry about that. I should have left that to you. So yes, I'm sure you would have removed the spam there. Thank you. So yeah, hello Solinaries as well. Hello Green Hat Actual Magician. Thank you for supporting the channel. So yeah, we can talk about fate. That's an interesting question. It's a discussion I often have with my astrologer friend Lynn Birkbeck, talking about fate and destiny and so forth. This meddling sheep. I want to thank you for the upsetting hilarity. A book with no page numbers is difficult to look things up. Which book is that? Which book has no page numbers? I do think certainly we've published a couple of books without page numbers, either deliberately so or through incompetence in setting up the right margins and gutterings for Amazon print on demand, perhaps. I know, for example, Llewellyn, some of our books could really do with an index as well for the Llewellyn books, but a couple of those have come back to us in terms of the rights. In fact, around the Tarot in 78 Days has now come back to us. The Magician's Kabbalah, okay, well, that's something I'll definitely look at putting in, because the Magician's Kabbalah was one of the earlier books for self-publishing. And I've definitely improved my typesetting ability and page layout ability as well. So hopefully I can correct that and also put an index in if there isn't one in already. I certainly know with the Magister, for example, I spent a lot of time retypesetting all of that and making sure that all of the chapter titles and things like that were correct and so forth. So I apologise for the early experimentation with the Magician's Kabbalah, and that's something I can definitely put right next year. So what are we going to talk about? I just briefly wanted to talk about something I'm excited to do probably over the holiday period to come, as well as the year ahead readings for next year, which I usually schedule for the whole of December. I'm going to be working on a very big video. For the Crucible Club. I'll take a look at that immediately as soon as we finish the stream here in about half an hour or so. So one thing actually, Meddling Sheep, that actually does bring me ahead actually to something that we are going to look at next year. One of the conversations I had a lot with people overseas over the last couple of weeks, as well as the general state of the world, which I think most of the people I spoke to agreed was in a bit of a state at the moment, with various solutions posited in discussion. But one was actually as scaling up all of the things we're doing. And because we have so many projects and so many creative projects and outlets, it's sometimes difficult to keep up with the admin and the general maintenance of dealing with any issues that people have, any suggestions and things like that. It is a sort of 1 person, 3 people operation at best. And obviously we have excellent folk like Tony, and we have a good team on moderation on Facebook and things like that, but it's all very time consuming and very demanding, and increasingly so. I've still got to spend time working on, I've got about 300 comments on the YouTube channel alone that I've not responded to as yet, and it's because we want to respond properly and want to respond personally and so forth. That's not going to be easily maintained next year, so we're looking at maybe taking on a couple of PA or social media folk in order to support some of the other work that we do. But again, because of the way we work and because of our interest in providing proper material from experience and so forth, we don't want to just farm out our membership facing stuff and all of that sort of thing to just anyone or to someone who doesn't have our same approach to things and our same empathy or sympathy for what we want to do with people, for people, and so forth. So yeah, we are going to be looking at that very early next year, so that we can actually we're going to have to invest a little bit and maybe overextend ourselves a little bit financially, but we want to do that to make it easier for the future. And Tracy, I know we've had some excellent folk, including yourself, offer, and we've not really been in a position to respond properly to that because we want to do it in a very professional, long-term, established, clearly communicated manner, and we're going to make time to do that early in the year. And so that brings me to the first of the actual creative projects. I'm going to do a long-form video on Pluribus, which I mentioned before. I just wanted to quickly run through these books just to mention some of the ideas that are going to go into that. Pluribus is a new series. It's streaming on Apple TV. It's basically about, without too many spoilers, a virus that in effect binds the whole of humanity together into a sort of shared hive mind. In the series itself, it's called The Joining. And so everyone is talking as one person, as one entity, as one group mind, hive mind. And there are several people who are not impacted by that for various reasons, and they are in effect the de facto last individual human beings surviving on the planet, and hilarity ensues. So And it's written by Vince Gilligan, who did a lot of the X-Files work and then went on to do Breaking Bad, which I still think is one of the best TV series or shows ever. The plotting, the scripting, the character development, the narrative, the story, the foreshadowing, the camera work, everything produced a masterpiece as far as I am concerned. But Pluribus, this is one of the first times I've seen on the screen, other than things like the Borg in Star Trek could be considered to be a hive mind, but that is projected as a sort of alien thing, not a human everyday experience. And Pluribus is one of the first times I've seen that idea really committed to the screen, and it's particularly wonderful in the fact that it's in the hands of Vince Gilligan and Apple, who have done some very good TV science fiction series. For example, Foundation, which was one of my all-time favourite book series, the Isaac Asimov books. So they've done some good science fiction work already. So, but the idea of a shared consciousness is not new. And a lot of online commentators are talking about, oh, this is like such and such. And they're really reaching back to really obvious things. And it's because most of them are obviously just looking online for, they need to do some commentary on it because it's trending. So therefore everyone is jumping onto it. But actually within occultism and esotericism, it's part of the whole idea of the aeons of humanity and human consciousness and the future of humanity. It's also not a new idea in science fiction, and Vince Gilligan is one of the first to admit that. And the references I'm going to be using are a couple of Russian books, a very early one called We, which influenced 1984, and also perhaps what was the other book, 1984, and Brave New World. But this book, We, came earlier. And actually in the series Pluribus, the characters say things like "we are us," because it's a group collective, and so that's literally the title of this Russian book. A later Russian book that's really terrifying is World Soul, which again is about the growth of a sort of collective consciousness. And because it's a Russian telling of that, it's actually a terrifying, dystopian, all-encompassing, horrific, obviously mass communist, socialist, shadow side that is the world soul. And you can see the sort of bodies screaming here in this illustration of this sort of collective mind that everyone is sort of drawn into. And this is a terrifying book. Another similar version, similar almost in plot and so forth to that, by Mike McQuay, is The Nexus. He wrote another book called Memories, which is one of my favourite science fiction books. Memories by Mike McQuay, or Mackay, I guess. And this is a sort of world soul type thing as well. So I'm going to weave those. But going back in occult terms and esoteric terms, mysticism terms, we bridge back to ideas of what's called eschatology, the future, the religious future, spiritual future of humanity. And we see in this, the illustrations, these sorts of diagrams here where we have all of the different ages of mankind from a religious sense. Tony, I have showed these before, but I just wanted to put them back on camera for anyone watching this new, who is coming to the channel through the conversations I've had in the last couple of weeks, in case they don't go back and watch everything else, because I want to lead with this into next year. The global brain, similar idea. And then in occult terms, I'm going to be looking at the Mart current, the Aeon of Mart, and this idea of these different ages of humanity and the way that is seen. And in effect, if you're watching Pluribus, then the joined are in effect the foreshadowing of the Aeon of Mart, and Carol and the others who are remaining individuals, they are in effect the last remnants of the Aeon of Horus, the Aeon of the individual. And what we're going to see with humanity, according to people like Charles Stanfield Jones, Crowley, other people like Soren Niemer, and other people who have followed the work of Mart's magic, is maybe a sort of 2,000-year period from 1904 of the age of the individual, shaking off the Aeon of Osiris, the age of the religious organizations, structure, control, sacrifice, all of those sorts of things. And in effect, there are big overlaps, and we saw in actually Joachim Fiore this idea that the aeons overlap with each other, because Crowley and others were very influenced by Christian mysticism, of course, so there are these sort of overlap periods between the aeons. And it also works with the idea of what most people, not everyone is aware of the idea of aeons and its earlier roots in eschatology, the sort of future religious state of humanity, and the sort of final death and rebirth into a new life of humanity, according to religious texts. But they are aware of the age of Aquarius and the age of Pisces, and even earlier the age of Aries, where we had all of obviously the ram sacrifices and things like that. And then we had the fish being the symbol of Christianity, and therefore the age of Pisces, and then the age of humanity, the age of science, and the age of the water bearer with the age of Aquarius. And then the next age, zodiacal age from that. So actually, I guess that comes as around to the question about fate. So who asked about fate? And would you... Marie, okay, so you asked about fate, and do you have a specific thought about fate, or a specific question about fate, or some aspect that you wanted us to think about with fate? Because it's an interesting idea, of course. So I'll just wait for Marie to maybe make a comment so that we're not off track with that. Just a couple of things actually from Tokyo. I gave a presentation on Lenormand there on the grounds that I was in effect introducing it. Now, I know our own book, Learning Lenormand, is published in Japanese. It's been translated into Japanese because I signed a few copies of it, but I wasn't aware how many Lenormand decks some of the Japanese audience had already created, so I got given a load of them. So I'm going to be sharing some of these in a separate video. This one will probably be a public video to obviously promote the decks, But I brought all of these back in my luggage, which was almost over limit. But wonderful. I like the cats here. I learned on this trip that the Japanese for cat is neko, and the kanji characters for cat were originally in the Edo period neko, I think that's right, neko ma or something like that. And those three kanji characters that have now been abbreviated to the first two mean sleeping child animal. And it reminded me that in German, the word for cat actually translates or comes from something like lounge tiger or living room tiger or something like that in its most literal sense. So I like the idea of different languages having different descriptive names for cat. And so a cat could either be a lounge tiger, living room tiger, or a sleepy child animal, which is quite nice. But yeah, and this is very typically Japanese style for sort of Western Edwardian period. Anyone watching the wonderful series, if I want to get people into anime or even manga, Japanese animation, then I always recommend Spy Family. Spy Family is just a wonderfully adorable, dorky, classic example of Japanese anime. And that has a very weird Edwardian, utopian, dystopian look to it. It's a very typical, strange, Japanese-specific aesthetic. And so this Lenormand deck has the book and the deck. And I love the outside design, very elegant. Again, very Japanese in its elegance and simplicity. So I'm looking forward to sharing that and looking into it a bit more. And then I was handed this as well, which I have no idea, but it's got a spread cloth, which is quite nice. And then, again, this sort of very typical Japanese bound book, the ribbon around it. And this looks, again, really interesting. I'm absolutely sure my Japanese is not up enough to read any of this, but I'll be looking at the keywords, like yes, no, for example, for the moon is a yes. So it's going to be quite interesting to have a look at how the Japanese have interpreted this. Apparently, I did ask Moto-san, the director of the museum, where a lot of the Japanese authors have got all of this Lenormand information that they've now put into their own books and their own decks already. And apparently it comes from one translation of one particular book a little while ago, after our own book, Learning Lenormand, which sort of broke the Lenormand into a wider audience again. And a lot of the meanings will have come from that one book. And I can't remember the author of that particular book, but the translator was the sort of first to really break the Lenormand into the Japanese market. So hopefully what we've now added into it will have hopefully course-corrected some of the meanings that float around there that aren't really core or intrinsic to the system itself. And that was a lot of the 2-hour presentation that I gave, was very much about the history of the images, the history of the meanings more particularly, and trying to really establish that. And the authors of several of these decks and books were in the audience and taking copious notes. So hopefully we've added back in the actual history and the actual symbology and meanings of some of the cards back into that stream that is obviously very, very strong. And we're hoping to grow that market, grow that audience, grow that style of reading really in Japanese as well in the coming years. So it's very exciting to see. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those cards in a separate public video soon. So talking about fate and karma and destiny as well. Rachel Pollack said something quite interesting to me ages ago, the late Rachel Pollack. She said, and I don't know if she was quoting somebody else, but fate is when we recognize and accept our fate, we transform it into our destiny. And I think that's a very nice way of putting it, that if we are in the stories, in the myths, if we are fated towards something, then quite often we resist that, or we're ignorant of it, and therefore we blindly go into our fated future. However, if we divine it through fortune telling, through divination itself, through dreams, through aligning to our core values, recognizing the signs, listening to our calling and responding to it, then we sense our fate, we sense our general direction, the weight of everything that is behind us and its most likely push forwards. And as a result, we then paddle in that current and own it as our destiny. And I think destiny is a far better, far more efficient, in its very basic sense, way of living. If we accept that there are fated things, it is far better to be aware of the likely fate that our body, our time, our place in the world, our family, our DNA, our genetic history, our culture, all of these things are likely to be pushing us, and then really lean into that and then make it our destiny and really grip that. However, having said that, I think that's one nice way of looking at it. But I think, and my experience from Western esotericism and from tarot itself is very much that time doesn't work in the way we think. We know this from every tarot card reading that we do, that time really doesn't work in some sort of linear, simplistic way. It's very much something more flat, more interconnected. One of the images that I used quite a bit in two different presentations, one in the Philippines and one in Tokyo, was very much about the stones being dropped in the water. It's from a book called The Wild Pendulum by Itzhak Bentov, and Stalking the Wild Pendulum, it's called. I was just taking a look to see if I could see where the book is. It's usually on my book shelf. No, I can't see it at the moment. But yeah, Stalking the Wild Pendulum by Itzhak Bentov. And he describes, and I won't go into the detail of it just now, but basically dropping a load of stones in water, looking at the ripples, and then you can discern from any interference pattern of any portion of the ripples where all of the stones must be. And I really think that that is a good model, but I take it a step further in Western esotericism. I very much see it as a atemporal, non-spatial system. In effect, that all of the stones are being dropped simultaneously. So let me just draw this on a bit of paper. No expense spared in the presentation here. Well, changing things is an interesting idea, and controlling things is an interesting idea if we modify our idea of time. So those of you who know my work or the channel will know my therapeutic triangle, that we have the way a person thinks about time is spatial. Like, we look forward to the future. We want to put that to one side. Oh, isn't that behind you now? So we codify in our awareness and in our experience time, not as some abstract thing, but in terms of space. And you can tell that when people move their hands when they're talking about time. It's an exercise I give students quite often, to watch when people are talking about time and like, oh, we've got lots of time, and someone will move their hands like so. So time and space, and then values and beliefs. If you change someone's values and beliefs, or get them to recognize those and be aware of them, or even take them outside of their own values and beliefs, it literally fundamentally rewrites their personality, and their ego process tends to fault and fail if it doesn't have a value system, a coherent one to work with, and similarly time and space. And of course you can knock all of these out by taking various chemicals as well, or going into altered states through deep meditation, trance work, ayahuasca, all of these other methods. And then finally, self-image. You change the way someone thinks about themselves, and you change them, because we are all, in effect, a self-image. And our awareness, our sort of field of awareness, sort of sits inside this as a sort of invisible triangle made out of these triangles as well. So if you combine that idea with this idea that every event, every thing that happens is a stone, and that each of these stones makes ripples, and the ripples, let me just draw that out there, and then this out here, the ripples are interconnected. So in effect, as every stone makes its ripple, every event, every situation, then as these ripples hit each other, in effect, they form interference patterns. And those interference patterns, of course, become chaotic, because not because they are random, quite the opposite, they're all entirely predictable, but because they become, in effect, super complex and immeasurable, because each of them is now interfering with each other, and so on and so on. And so big events make big ripples and have big impact. But the thing is that this event could be a past one, this one could be a future one, this could be a past one here, then we could put a future one here, it doesn't really matter. And it's happening all at the same time. It is what's called the block universe model, where the entire universe in time is a solid state. This is a bit of a mind bender, so I do apologize for this. But if I'm jet lagged, then you can join me in the state as well. That in effect, all of that, and you can just basically colour that in, is one thing. There's nothing happening. There's no change. There is no movement. There is no... And it goes back to the early Platonic idea about time is the moving likeness of eternity. So eternity can't change. Eternity can't move anywhere. But time is a moving likeness. So we experience time as a moving thing. We feel like we are moving from yesterday into today into tomorrow. And the idea of time's arrow, which is a common one in science, and that's measured in effect by entropy, in effect physical and chemical and what's the word I'm after? Jet lag brain's kicking in again. Not physical, not quantum, but anyhow, real world events cannot be undone. They go one way. If you burn a match, then it cannot unburn itself. And so, in effect, time's arrow points a particular way based on entropic principles, that things tend to go that direction and don't suddenly go backwards, a bit like in Doctor Strange when he has the time band on the eye of Agamotto and he twists it and the apple that he's taken a bite off puts itself back together again, and then he twists it the other way and it breaks down again, and then he can sort of move it in time's arrow. But when we do a tarot reading, we are in effect taking a segment. Every card that we put on the table is in effect taking a segment off the solid state. And each of these, of course, is its own ripple. As you place a card, as you finish shuffling the deck, and that's why shuffling is so important, because you are recreating and aligning the cards to the chaos of the universe. That isn't chaos, it's just apparently unpredictable because it's complex. So it's a complex system, not a chaotic one. And so you lay out 4 cards, and each of those is its own ripple, but it's picking up on future and past ripples. Make sense? Sort of-ish. As a result, nothing is fated or determined, and there is really no fate or destiny other than locating our position in the solid state and coming to the present moment every moment. I did a thelemic presentation called Thelema for the Terrified while I was away, that I'll do a video for members into next year based on that presentation. And one of the exercises that one of my teachers once gave me was, do something other than what you're doing right now. And when you give that exercise to people, quite often, if they're sat down, they stand up. If they are stood up, they sit down. Or if they are facing one particular direction, they turn and face another. But as my teacher said to me and pointed out and taught me, and as I now teach others, no, that's not what I'm asking you to do. Do something other than what you are doing right now. And the thing is that you can't. You are always doing what you are doing right now. And as my teacher put it to me, you are always therefore doing the most important thing to you. You may not feel like that, or you may want to excuse that or say, no, I'm having a break in between doing the important things to me. But your action now, what you are doing right this second, and the apparent next second, and the apparent next second, and all the way into tomorrow and the day after, and for the rest of your life, is always, any moment, you are not only doing the most important thing that you are doing, you are also not able to do anything else. So it is always a sense of tarot reminding us to come to the present, our control is in the present moment and preparing for the future. So in effect, we are trying to learn where we are in order to, if all of these ripples are our likely fate, so that's the likely fate rather than absolute fate, we're more likely to hit these ripples rather than these ripples. Then by learning who we are, where we are, when we are, coming to the present, we can then choose which of the ripples we are going to, and this is a word I've been using a lot recently, resonate with. A lot of magic works through correspondence, and tarot as well works through correspondence. And I believe because of this model that is because correspondence allows us to resonate better to the ripples that we would choose in the present moment to make more important to ourselves and prepare for a future in which every moment we are doing the most important thing to us. We know that, we recognize that, we are present with it. In effect, we have achieved transcendence and illumination because we are in reality all of the time. And happy Friday, nerdy rodents. Thank you very much. So, how about that for a jet-lagged explanation of the entirety of reality, fate, destiny, our role in the universe, the vast aeons of human societal change through the aeons of Egyptian deities, and the zodiacal ages and so forth. Not bad for a Friday evening, huh? And hopefully over the next year, we're going to be doing a lot more of this on the channel. I had a lot of inspirational conversations over the last couple of weeks, been very inspired, particularly by what other people are doing. And I really do want to lean far more into the as deep as we can go, as well researched as we can go, as deep into my own personal experience and the experience that I've read of other occultists and magicians and mystics over the many years, like Joachim Fiore. And yeah, so we're going to be doing a lot of that stuff because no one else is doing it. I met plenty of people who didn't seem to have a book on their shelves, and so have learnt through the internet and PDFs. And that's a good way of learning, but it's not the way I learned. So I'm going to be sharing, as it's a bookshelf channel, I'm going to be sharing more books, going into them a lot more deeply, and really talking about not the trending books that everyone else is almost being forced and trained into, talking about only what's trending because that's what gets attraction, gets the views, gets the advertising, money and everything else. We are going to hold fast to our course and look at things I think are important to the Western esoteric initiatory system, and particularly initiation, particularly changing our state, changing our actual awareness so that we can become more present and more unified with the state of things as they are in reality, not as we would want them to be, like them to be, expect them to be, or believe them to be. So that is what we are going to be looking at. And as I said, we are going to be making, particularly for the membership part of the channel, far more of a community space here so that you and I, those of us who are interested in this sort of thing and trying to go as deep and asking the questions, this is the most important thing of all, is to ask the questions. So Marie, thank you for asking the question, because it's by our questions we are known. It's by the universe inquiring into itself. That's how we take part in it, by asking questions. And to never stop asking questions and not be a person, a teacher, an author, or a channel on YouTube who thinks that they know the answers and is giving those answers to everyone else. That is not where we are going to fall into. So as Bill's saying, fate, destiny are possibly concepts put into place by religious-esque hierarchies, controlling systems to some degree, and they're just words or concepts that divert one's freedom of choice, maintaining a limited frequency. Yeah, I'd entirely agree with that. I do think that hierarchies is an interesting thing. Certainly in the 80s, there was a lot of conversation about occult orders and hierarchies, and my side of things is very much that I really believe in hierarchical work, hierarchical structures, hierarchical systems, but what I would call natural hierarchies, almost a meritocracy than anything else, that it's important to allow those to arise, but also to put them in place, because otherwise we just have randomness. And I'm not on that particular side of that, whatever that divide might be. I do think control is an odd word as well, and that's something we can look at, because control always implies duality, because you have to have control, something controlling, and something being controlled. And once you have a solid state model, it's impossible to think of one thing controlling another. Although we could ask in the metaphor, who dropped the stones, which is more like a Zen koan than anything, but it is only a metaphor. It's only a map of things, an image or symbol of things. So yeah, that's an interesting point, and and that's the important thing, Marie. And Birds is saying, can't wait to hear what Marie thinks about it. And Tony's pointing out, yes, we're all unique individuals. But Marie's saying, she can't wait to hear what she thinks as well. And that's the wonderful thing, isn't it? That we can surprise ourselves by thinking about something and maybe not knowing what we're going to think. As Nerdy Rodent saying, who controls the controller? It is very much a sense of who is the master that makes the grass green. Is the famous koan. I was retelling the story to someone last week about a friend of mine. Back in the days I was about 19 and he was 18, I think, maybe 19 as well. And I'd introduced him to Zen and what little I knew of Zen. We had a friend of ours, a mutual friend, who was very much into Zen, who was more of a Taoist, and he was a plumber as well. So he literally worked with water and used to quote things like, the Tao, the highest good is like water, it flows like the Tao, and so forth. He was very Zen, and so actually did physically work with water as a plumber in every day of his life. But my friend had read a load of koans, like what is the sound of one hand clapping? Does a tree falling in a forest make a sound if there's no one there to hear it? That sort of thing. But the one that had obsessed him was the who is the master that makes the grass green? And it was about 2:00 in the morning one morning, and I heard a banging on the door. I was woken up by it, went downstairs. I think I was living with my parents at the time, and opened the door, and my friend was there, and he was like, this was a wild thing, obviously not slept for quite a while, and he was looking at me and he was yelling, who is the master that makes the grass green? I am the master who makes the grass green. It is I am the master who makes the grass green. And he was totally in this altered state of utter realization. The sort of ones where usually people then pass a special cigarette to each other and go, but it's I am the master who makes no, you don't get it. I am the master who makes the grass green. No, man, you just, it's I who, and he was yelling the equivalent of that, but he'd obviously had a massive insight into reality and the way we make our own reality, as well as Tony, more down to earth, says, each to their own. Absolutely, each to their own. We all have our own model and our own reality that we see out into the world, and I think it's useful within the Western esoteric field to actually discuss those maps and those realities so that we can refine each of our, not only refine our own model and our own map, but also share it and recognize that everyone has that. Again, topic over the last couple of weeks worldwide has been very much about coming to better forms of sharing, unity, all of those good things, all of those world-shattering revelations that, human beings are better when they get on with each other rather than fight each other. And at the moment, we do seem to be living in a very divisive world that is being powered by affront and outrage and negativity. And the social media channels are amplifying that for their own very commercial gains. Our lives are being made into commodities, and our attention is being farmed. And even worse, I have a weird suspicion that deliberately, consciously, or just as a byproduct of everything else, we are all being entrained in some way. Attention is being trained in a particular way. One of those ways is to favour short-term attention, not long-term attention. And I believe that is a very, very, very dangerous thing. And that's why I'm going to be leaning far more into long-form videos and not following the trends of podcasts and short-form videos and virtually content-free outrage videos and all of the other things that are flooding the channels at the moment. So if you're for that, then yes, absolutely, brilliant. Stick with me. We're going to be doing a lot of that next year, and also looking to scale up just a little bit and sort out our admin a little bit more. So I think that's it for today. I'm going to go and immediately crash what's happening at the moment. I'm day 3 now since I've been back. So I've been catching up on the Instagram posts. We're going to schedule those in advance, and we're also going to take a look at how we can get a lot more work done on the Magister. The Magister is now out and available. Just remind people about that. Also, we're going to try and get some groups going. So obviously we have the Magister, which is a massive, massive book. And this has the entire grade system sort of laid out. There is a lot of information in this. One by one, we take them out of this world. But one thing that we're going to be doing next year is within the Order of Everlasting Day, we're going to be practicing the planetary rituals. I've had those in store for decades and haven't got round to practicing them. So now we have the Magical Order is quite stable. We've been running for about 10 years now. But we would like to get some live groups going for people who want to work with, for example, the Rites of the 12 Signs, which is a monthly ritual that you tie into a actual project. So you tie into an actual project and go through these stages, learn how to do a simple ritual, and you use the ancient Egyptian gods, quite straightforward rituals that you can do by yourself. But it would be nice if we had a Facebook group or an online space, maybe on Discord, where people who want to practice a set of rituals. And we have so many other exercises, for example, the Ghost Train that we do for the week ahead of Samhain. We have the Gates of Valentine that are really good for working on relationship work around February and so forth. And yeah, so we have a lot of really practiced, tested, solid, provable occult experiences that we can give to people, share with people, for example, through this book, and actually have people work on it and experience real, actual magic in their lives, because we know, because we've run them. We run them with hundreds of people over the years. For example, we have a group for the inner guide meditation and so forth. Yeah, Sherry, that's exactly what we're going to do. We may put together all of the Gates books into one workbook, and and then have that as a paperback handy book, because a lot of the work that we did earlier on was because we wanted to share it, and because we had so much, and we still have so much material that we haven't printed or published, and that's because it's like heavy work in the sense of it's all tested for years and years and years before we put anything into print. And it makes us aware of just how much is in print that isn't tested. The author has just written it down. They've never done the rituals that they're writing. They've never, ever done them. And they've certainly never had other people do them. And it's so dangerous. And so, luckily enough, they don't work to actually make actual change, because it's just been written out of somebody's head. It's never actually been proven, tested, worked, tweaked, refined, modified over years. And so what we did was we shortcut a lot of the work in publishing by just putting them onto Kindle to share them. And we can now, after that sort of blitzkrieg of activity over the last sort of 15 years, we always did intend to come back when we had time and sort of backfill and tidy up some of that once it was out there. Our primary purpose was not to make money or anything. It was to share the work that we had, just in case something happened and all of that work just got lost in some way or another, because we felt it was important, and a lot of people found a lot of utility and effectiveness in doing those exercises, so we really wanted to share those. But now it's time to just go back and tidy a lot of that up a little bit, whilst also working, for example, on the next 2 volumes of the Magister, which, again, requires a lot of time reading and research. I don't know how many hours went into, for example, Spiritual Key to the Tarot. Thousands, I would say thousands and thousands of hours reading, researching over a period of 12 years in particular, 10 specifically, and so these things do require quite a bit of work. Okay, everyone, so thanks a lot. It's wonderful to be back with everyone, and to see all of the comments from all of the names that are members of the channel. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to developing the channel over next year, both public videos, but specifically members-only videos. It's not very much to join. It really does help pay the bills on my side and give me time to actually concentrate on producing quality work for everyone that is tested, that is true, that is authentic to the Western esoteric industry system. So looking forward to next year. We'll be doing some things over the last 4 weeks of the year. It will be a little bit quieter, obviously, as we start to concentrate on building for next year. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for those joining us new. Thanks for the questions. And I look forward to seeing you in the community chat as well, here on the YouTube channel or over on our various Facebook groups as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. I was trying to remember what time of day it was. Actually what day it was. And it will only take another couple of days for me to get back into the UK time zone. I'm currently waking up at 5 o'clock every morning, just wide awake, trying to get back to sleep for a couple of hours, and then crashing at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pushing through that, and then getting some decent sleep. So thanks a lot, everyone, and look forward to sharing, and also sharing some of those and some of the books as well. I've got the Annie Beyond by Rob Rubin, and an interesting guy I met, two interesting guys, fellow speakers, Wade and Shay. And Shay is a left-hand path practitioner, a self-declared Satanist, and he's written a very good book called Nietzsche and the Left-Hand Path. So I want to share that and talk about what the left-hand path is according to him, and also other authors as well, and from my own experience, and also talk about Wade's book, which is called The Acolyte, and is a fun little book, but I think might be quite ideal for beginners as well. So, but I obviously want to read through it, test out some of the ideas myself, before recommending it just as a favour or anything. Hopefully it's going to be something that will be useful to people. So, that's another Shay. So I'm glad that you got your book. I also received the orders of the Tarot of the Secret Dawn. That's right. So if anyone didn't get their deck for the member offer, then get in touch with me again, because I do now have stock of whatever deck that I promised people. So if there's anyone left that hasn't got their deck, no worries, get in touch and we'll get that resolved for you. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Tony, for moderating us, keeping us all in order. It's very much appreciated as ever. Have a great weekend, everyone, and take care of yourselves and each other. Bye for now.